Oh my Imam Zainul Abidin, oh my Imam Zainul Abidin, oh my Imam Zainul Abidin, oh Sajjad.
Assalamu alaikum, boys and girls, and welcome to Lesson 1 of the Al-Asr Muharram 1442-2020. If you are listening to the age 3 to 7 age group video clip, we are going to begin with the Noha Recitation, Ya Aba Abdullah. Thereafter, our Majlis class is going to be on Imam Zainul Abidin's birth and childhood, as well as the right of the self. To help you understand the content of the Majlis class, you will engage in a craft, which is a cutting and pasting activity of the body parts of the self. Thereafter, we're going to end the lesson with asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove His blessings on the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt by reciting the La'an. And then we're going to stand up and send our salutations to Imam Hussein, his family, and his companions by reciting the Salam. If you're listening to the age 8 to 12 video clip, your Noha recitation will be Sajjad se Pucha Bakir ne, and the activity that is going to help you understand the Majlis content is a word search that you can download from the Jafri website. So get ready for the Noha recitation.
Hai Sajjad, 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 hai Sajjad. سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے. سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
وہ شام کے منظر کیسے تھے,
وہ شام کے منظر کیسے تھے,
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے. سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
کیسا تھا قیامت کا منظر جب لوٹ کے عابد گھر پہنچے. پوچھا تھا مدینے والوں نے,
پوچھا تھا مدینے والوں نے,
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے. سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
بے گور و کفن لاشاپ نے بابا کا میں نے دیکھا ہے. للہ نہ پوچھو یہ مجھ سے,
للہ نہ پوچھو یہ مجھ سے,
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے. سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
ہر سمت سے پتھر آتے تھے اور آگ لئی برساتے تھے. بتلاؤں بھلا تم کو کیسے,
بتلاؤں بھلا تم کو کیسے,
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے. سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
آدان نو کے نیزہ سے تطہیر کی چادر چھینی ہے. بھولے سے بھی اب کوئی نہ کہے,
بھولے سے بھی اب کوئی نہ کہے,
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے.
سجاد سے پوچھا باقر نے کیوں خون رواں
بات کیسے کہوں دربار میں کیسے پہنچے تھے ہم سے نہ کوئی اب یہ پوچھے
ہم سے نہ کوئی اب یہ پوچھے
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے
سجاد سے پوچھا باطل نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے سجاد سے پوچھا باطل نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے
دو لال تھے ایک ماں کے دونوں قسمت نے اس سے چھین لیے اس ماں سے کوئی کیسے یہ کہے
اس ماں سے کوئی کیسے یہ کہے
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے
سجاد سے پوچھا باطل نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے سجاد سے پوچھا باطل نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے
اشہر سجاد کے پیروں کے چھالوں سے خون نکلتا تھا چھالے بھی رو کر کہتے تھے
چھالے بھی رو کر کہتے تھے
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے
سجاد سے پوچھا باطل نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے سجاد سے پوچھا باطل نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے
وہ شام کے منظر کیسے تھے
وہ شام کے منظر کیسے تھے
کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے
سجاد سے پوچھا باطل نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے سجاد سے پوچھا باطل نے کیوں خون رواں ہے آنکھوں سے سجاد ہے 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 سجاد
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this year's virtual Al-Asr Muharram program. Now I know it's a bit different because our centers are still closed and I know we miss our friends, but we're still very, very lucky that we're able to gather together just like we did in Shahr Ramadan from the comfort of our own homes, even maybe enjoying a snack at the same time, to come together and learn about the tragedy of Karbala. You know, this year we have to try extra hard to make it very special, to make sure that we show Imam Hussein alayhi salam that even though we're doing it in a different way, we still appreciate the sacrifices that Imam and his family made for us, right? And so I'm making a pact that I will be here every week for the next few weeks to teach you a little bit more about the tragedy of Karbala, maybe to share some exciting stories, even some activities at the end that you can do at your own time. And so maybe if you would make a pact too to come here every week so that we can learn together and we can benefit from this holy month, inshallah. Okay? So just as every year, Muharram, we have a theme for the Al-Asr program. This year's theme is Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam and Risalatul Huquq, which is the treatise of rights. And we will get into that more in detail today and in the lessons to come. Okay, so today's our first lesson and let's get started. Okay, so we want to start off by talking about Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam a little bit. You know, when we say that we love our Imams or the Ahlul Bayt, it's important for us to learn about them and know about them so that we actually make truth to this claim, right? Would we ever say that we love somebody but we don't really know them? Most likely not, right? So we want to know our Imam and understand a little bit more about him and his role. Our Imam was born in Medina. And can anybody guess what date he was born on? We celebrate his birthday every year at our centers. Yes, that's correct. He was born on the 5th of Sha'ban, 38 years after Hijrah. And his mother was actually a Persian princess. His mother's name was Shahrbanu. and she passed away after giving birth to the Imam. He was her only child. Imam was sometimes called Ibn al-Khiratain, or the son of the best two, and this was because the fourth Imam was the son of two noble families. So the Prophet was his great-grandfather, and his mother was the daughter of the king of Iran. Now let's talk a little bit about his early childhood. When the Imam was born, the first Imam, Imam Ali alayhi salam, was still alive, and Imam Zain al-Abidin remained in his company, the company of his grandfather, for 2 years. It is said that often Imam Ali alayhi salam would hug Imam Zain al-Abidin and say, "My son, you are Zain al-Abidin." And one day Imam Ali was praying, and Imam Zain al-Abidin, who was only 1.5 years old at that time, started imitating his grandfather. He prayed the same way that Imam Ali did, to show that his love for Salah was there from such a young age, right? And upon completing the prayers, Imam Ali says to Imam Zain al-Abidin, "How truthful was the Prophet when he said that our young and our old are all the same like Muhammad." So we see that Imam Zain al-Abidin's love for prayer and Islam and Allah was there from a very, very young age. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam was only 2 years old when his grandfather, Imam Ali alayhi salam, was martyred in the mosque of Kufa. After that, the family of the Prophet returned to live in Medina. And Imam Zain al-Abidin saw his uncle, Imam Hassan, as the Imam, and then his own father, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, as the Imam and leader of the Shi'as. Imam Zain al-Abidin, can you imagine how much he learned from them? He learned so much from them, and he was very pious and a devoted servant to Allah, and he had many, many great qualities. And we will talk about them in detail throughout the weeks, but some of the qualities he had was he was very pious and knowledgeable and generous and kind and compassionate. Okay, so we just want to go a little bit into more about his character. One of the defining characteristics of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam is his love for prayer. The Imam spent a lot of time in the worshipping of Allah, and that's why he's been given this title of Zainul Abidin. Does anybody know what that means? Yeah, it means the ornament of worshipper, somebody who beautifies prayer or beautifies worship. And the Imam showed us how to truly, truly worship Allah with our body, our mind, and our heart. The worship of the body is basically the physical act of prayer, and that's just the outer form of worship. True worship, or true salah, or true prayer is done when the heart and the mind also feels connected to Allah and thinking of Him. Oftentimes we pray when our body is moving too fast or our mind is somewhere else, but the Imam showed us how to pray where everything is in sync. Our body, our mind, and our soul are all connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when the Imam was praying, he would become pale and start trembling at the thought of Allah and the thought of his Creator, and he would weep and beseech Allah in complete, complete humility. And that's why we know that he was such an extraordinary worshipper and became known as Zainul Abidin. Another title that's given to our Imam is Sayyidus Sajidin, meaning the Chief of Prostrators, or somebody who loves to do sajda. The Imam would sit there and perform his salah, and then he would love to perform long, long sajdas after the salah. And there's a really amazing hadith that tells us that sajda is the closest a person can get to Allah. And that in this position, the most precious part of a body, so the part of your body that's your head, that you put down on the ground, and that shows complete, complete humility to the Creator, that we need Allah so much that we're able to kind of be so connected with Him in this sajda. And you know what? The best part is, our Masumin have told us that when we prolong our sajda, Shaitan actually cries out in anger and frustration. Who doesn't want to make Shaitan angry and frustrated and kind of push him away from us, right? So as Shaitan loses his position in favor with Allah because he refused to do sajda, basically he wants us as human beings also not to do sajda to Allah. And so when we prolong our sajdas and we ask for du'as and we ask for favors from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for ourselves and for other people, it really, really angers Shaitan. So remember that the next time you do sajda, try and prolong it just a little bit longer each time, okay? After the events of Karbala, Imam Zainul Abidin spent his time guiding people. As the Umayyad rulers of the time, they did not allow the Imam to preach openly. So the Imam used du'as and supplication instead of lectures to guide the people. And so the Imam would pray to Allah with every event that happened in a very moving way, in a very informative way. And so within these du'as, the Imam would teach about the qualities of Allah, about spirituality and good akhlaq. And people would listen very carefully to some of these du'as and these supplications. And some of his companions wrote down these du'as. And so they were compiled into a book called Sahifa al-Sajjadiyah, which is also commonly known as Sahifa al-Kamila. And there's, lots of du'as in this book about absolutely everything that you may need in your day-to-day life. Another book that's attributed to him is called Risalatul Huquq, which is a treatise of rights. And that's the book that we're going to concentrate on for the next few weeks. So Risalatul Huquq is a book that was first narrated by a very respected and trustworthy companion of our Imam, by the name of Abu Hamza Thimali. You may have heard that name before. And within this book, the Imam teaches us about our duties and obligations and responsibilities towards ourselves and others. And so the Imam lists 50 rights in this book and tells us what we have to do and how we should take this right and seek the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and use it to the best of our ability. Okay, so the first right that we want to talk about is the right of the self. And the Imam says that it is a right of your person, as it is your right that you should use your body fully in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by giving your tongue its right, by giving your hearing its right, your sight its right, to your hand its right, to your leg its right, to your stomach its right, and so on. Seeking the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this task. And so now we take our discussion a bit further into details of the self and talk about the body. Our body, we have to understand, is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And when we're blessed with something and we're blessed with a gift from Allah, it is our responsibility to take care of that gift, right? And to use it to what will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we should use our body to become closer to Allah, to bring our soul closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because our body is actually just a container, and this container is what is holding our nafs and our soul, which will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that last day, right? And we have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created our body in a perfect way, and so each part of our body has been given special rights in Islam. So the next thing we talk about and the next question we want to answer is what will live on forever. We talked about our body being a container for our soul, but it's important to understand that when we talk about something living on forever, it is actually our soul that lives on forever. But in order for us to live on this earth, that soul needs a body, which is the container we talked about, right? And this soul, we kind of represent it as a heart sometimes. We want to keep it as clean and as shiny as possible so that on the day of judgment, when we go to Allah, we tell Allah that this gift that you gave us, we took care of it properly, right? When we carry out our actions, and if they're not good actions, if they hurt people, or if they're not very kind and we're not taking care of this soul, our soul starts to become very dark. Our heart becomes very dark and very dirty and very impure, and that's not how we want to meet Allah on the day of judgment. So this body that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, and the soul that's inside of it that we want to preserve because they're both very precious gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what should we be using this body for in this world? It's very important that when we use our body, everything that we do should be used to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to do good deeds. We're not going to be taking a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then not use it in the right way, right? So our body should always be used to do good deeds and to always think of what does Allah want me to do? What would Allah like me to do with my body? So did you know that on the day of judgment, once we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our limbs, That's our hands and our feet and everything that's part of our body will actually bear witness on the day of judgment. And what that means is on the day of judgment, our bodies will tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what they did, when they did those different acts, who they were interacting with, why they behaved a certain way, how it was conducted, the different actions, where. So basically, our limbs are going to speak on behalf of us. We will not have control over our hands and over our feet. They will actually be able to confess and bear witness on their own and tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what we used it for. And so our Imam teaches us that the rights of our body and the rights of our limbs is that we use it for the best and we use it for good so that on the day of judgment, our limbs can testify for us that we were good people on this earth. So I know I have a brilliant audience following along, and from what I've said, if we look at this question, what kind of soul will enter Jannah? Think about this. If you have somebody sitting with you, maybe discuss with them what you think are some of the main things that we need to focus on to make sure that our soul is the kind of soul that will enter Jannah. So basically a soul that is very clean and shiny that will enter Jannah, right? And that comes along with basically having your focus be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every time you are praying, every time you are talking to somebody, any act that you do has to be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So the intention is extremely, extremely important. And so we know that the kind of soul that will enter Jannah is only the one that was focused on Allah in this world. And so with that, I kind of want to go to a really, it's actually one of my favorite stories. And so I want to share a story with you to talk about the importance of our intention and doing things only for the sake of Allah. During the time of Prophet Musa, there lived a man, a very pious man, that loved to pray day and night to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One day, some people came and told him that there was a group of people that used to worship a tree. Now, they probably worshipped this tree because it was so big and majestic. Maybe it gave them shade and shelter and a lot of fruits. And so they were worshipping this tree. But this man, this pious man, was very upset about that because he knew that we should only be worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he decided to take an axe and go and chop down this tree. Now, as he went to chop down this tree, there was an old man that came in his path. Now, this old man was actually very smart and very tricky because he was actually shaitan in disguise. So he disguises himself as an old man and he comes to this pious man saying, "Why are you, rushing? What are you doing?" And so this man explains to him that there's this group of people, they're worshipping a tree. It is not right. I have to go and stop them. And so Shaitan starts telling him that, you know what, don't worry about it. Why are you wasting your time? He tries to convince him against this idea. And so they start to bicker and they start to quarrel. As they continue to bicker and quarrel, they start fighting. This pious man is extremely strong, so he's able to pin down this old man or Shaitan, and he says, you know what, I'm just going to go home and do this some other time. And so he heads back home. The next day he tries to do the same thing, and the same old man comes in his path and says, you know what, please just leave the tree alone, just let them be. And they start arguing, they start quarreling. Now Shaitan knows that he has to come up with a bigger plan to prevent this man, and so he says, you know what, I'm going to strike you a deal. So the old man tells this pious man that I will strike you this deal. I will give you 2 gold coins under your pillow every single morning if you just let go of this tree. Just forget about it, carry on with your life. And so the pious man is thinking that, you know what, this is a sweet deal. I get money, I don't have to work, I can pray to Allah, I can help the needy. And so he accepts this deal. So every morning he wakes up and he finds 2 gold coins under his pillow and he's extremely happy. One day he wakes up and there's no gold coins under his pillow. Can you imagine? What do you think happened? Exactly. He went again and he decided to chop down the tree. Again, this old man comes. The old man comes and says, "Hey, what are you doing? We had a deal." And so this pious man says, "Exactly, we did have a deal and you backed out on your deal. I woke up this morning and I had no gold coins. So I'm going to go ahead and chop down that tree." So the moment the pious man tells this old man, who is really Shaitan, that I'm going to go ahead and chop down that tree, Shaitan gets really upset again and he starts fighting and they start quarreling and they start fighting with each other. This time Shaitan is very strong and he is able to pin down this pious man. The pious man is very shocked. He thinks to himself, why is it that Shaitan became so much stronger, or this old man became so much stronger? And the old man tells him that the last couple of times we fought, you were doing it for the sake of Allah. Your intention now has changed for the 2 gold coins that's made me stronger, because now his intention was not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we want to maintain this God-given spiritual strength that we all have within us, we make sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always at the forefront of every action that we're doing. So any action that we carry out, any intention that we have is for the sake of Allah, and it goes back to this topic that we're talking about, the right of the body and the right of the soul, that everything we do should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that will always keep us very strong, inshallah. This brings us to the end of our first lesson. Don't forget to go ahead and visit jafri.org/Al-Asr Muharram, where we have some fun activities for you. We have one ready for you based on this particular lesson. Now, you have to come back next week to find out what our next topic will be. I will leave you with a riddle, okay? What is always wet but never rusts, and often held but mostly untouched? The answer for this riddle is going to be our next topic. See you next week. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم العن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم العن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين عليه السلام وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم العنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين.